We're learning Hilchos Megillah, Perek Aleph, Halacha Beis. Rambam begins, Echad HaKoreh v'Echad HaShomer min HaKoreh. It doesn't matter whether you read the Megillah or you hear from the person who reads the Megillah. So, in the Peirush, we go to the Peirush, is Yotzi Lechevosa. He fulfills his obligations. V'hu sheyishma mipi mi shehu chaya b'chiyoseh. But you have to hear it from somebody who himself is obligated to read it. As we learned earlier, that's the question of Nashim Ktanim, Nashim Roshim. Hashemea, somebody who hears from somebody who's not Chayav B'Kriya, you're not Yoitze. The Fikot, the Rambam says, Im hoyer HaKoreh Kotten or Shoiter, if the Koreh was a Kotten, a minor, or a Shoiter, Hashemea men on Yoitze. The person who reads it is not Yoitze, because Kotten and Shoiter are not Chayav B'Kriyosei, or a Kotten is only because of Chinuch. The Magen Mishnah cites the Mishnah in Megillah 19b. Everyone's kosher to read the Megillah except for a Cherish, and they add the Cherish. Now we'll see what a Cherish is. Somebody who's deaf and dumb. A Shoit and a Kotten. A Yehuda Machshe Kotten. A Yehuda says a Kotten can read it for others, although it is down Mishnah. But Avanir, it would seem from the Rambam that Ishur can be moitzi other men. And that's the Halacha. But Halacha, Aleph, we discussed this already. Therefore, if the person reading was a Kotten or Shoiter, he wasn't Yoitze. The Rambam left out Cherish, even though it's mentioned in the Mishnah in 19b. Because the Mishnah is of the opinion that the Rambam wrote Cherish or Shoiter Kotten, like in the Mishnah. And he explains that Cherish, which is mentioned in the Mishnah, means there are two types of people who can't hear. There's a person who can't hear, and there's a person who can speak and he doesn't hear. If he doesn't speak, for sure he cannot read the Megillah. So you don't have to talk about whether he's going to be mitzvah somebody else because he's mute and he can't speak. The Gemara points out that even if it was read and it's too late, he did not fulfill the obligation, like Rabbi Yossi, who was of the opinion in Brachos 15a that somebody reads Shema and he didn't let himself hear it into his ears, you're not Yoitzer. Therefore, Megillah, since he cannot make it heard to his ears because he's a Cherish, even though he can speak, but Elena would be in his older age, he may have become deaf. He cannot be you're not Yoitzer with his reading, even though he is reading it. But this is difficult to understand because by Kriya Shema we paskin, not like Rabbi Yossi. We say it's enough to say it, even though you don't actually hear it. And therefore, why should the Rambam say that if a Cherish reads it, you're not Yoitzer? The Kesef Mishnah is of the opinion that the true text of the Rambam is that he does not mention Cherish, a deaf person, and so to the Orchos Chaim has the text. However, in Yerushalmi, it's explained that Cherish that's mentioned in the Mishnah because you always put these three together. Cherish Shoiter v'Kotten usually go as a group, but in actuality, only a Shoiter Kotten you can't be Yoitze, but you Yoitze b'di'evad from a Cherish who speaks even though he doesn't hear. Kesef Mishnah concludes that if you want to keep the text Cherish in the words of the Rambam, even though the Halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi b'Kriyas Shema, that a Cherish is not Yoitze, one would be able to that even though the Gemara is talking about Rabbi Yossi, that's only if we'll say that in the same way that he disagrees with Kriyas Shema, he disagrees by Megillah. Since Kriyas Shema, only Rabbi Yossi says if he didn't hear it, he's not Yoitzer. The Mishnah in the Megillah is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. However, we'll turn the page. Since Rebbe learned in the Mishnah that if you heard it with you and the one who reads it and does not hear it is Yotze Rabbi Yossi says lo yotza. It would seem that Rebbe, when he says something without a name, that's the majority opinion. He brings the words of Rabbi Yehuda as if everyone agrees with it, since he doesn't mention him. The question is, Megillah, he just states that if you hear a Machon Nesher HaGadol, you're not Yoitze, like Rabbi Yossi. So why is that? If we're going to say that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you would be Yoitze. And it could be that Rebbe is of the opinion that Megillah is different than Kriya Shema. Megillah, there's a need for also Persume Nisa, to make publicly known the miracle. And when the person who's reading it is a cherish, that he can't hear it, so he's lacking in that fulfillment because he's not sure that others have heard what he said. And therefore, somebody hears from a cherish who speaks but does not hear himself, is not Yoitze. So we have to say in the Rif, the Rosh, that they write that by Megillah, that you're not Yoitze from a cherish. And by Kriya Shema, they say you are Yoitze, even though you don't hear it. Because there isn't that ingredient of presuming nisa, of making sure that you can be sure that others know because of you. The Torah adds, even if he's at the age of chinuch, and not moitzim others the obligation of choiva. Rabbi Yehuda permits a cotton who is a gila chinuch, bala iter poisik Rabbi Yehuda, that a cotton can read the Megillah for others. Beis Yosef brings from Tosfos that Rabbi Yehuda is also machshir only by a cotton who is of age to be taught. We're not going to go into this, that's why it's in 2 columns. And if you want to go more in depth into it, you can go read the 2 columns. We'll turn the pages and we'll continue here on the Pri Megadim on Daf Yud Zayin in Mishbet Zov cites a Pri Chodesh that if somebody read the Megillah and he didn't hear it with his ears, he's Yoitze. Because I might think that by Megillah you need Persumei Nisa, as we mentioned before. And therefore, if he didn't make it known to his own ears, he's not Yoitze because he's not letting anybody else know about it. Therefore, he tells us you are Yoitze. But according to the Taz, Cherish cannot be Moitzi because he's lacking in the ability to listen. So the Pri Megadim says, if that's the case, you make a difference between Megillah, that the main thing is listening. Kriya Shema, it says v'dibarta bom, the main thing is stating it. Therefore, by Kriya Shema, we paskin halachically, the main thing is speaking, and it's different from Mikra Megillah, where the main thing is stating. Therefore, the Rambam specifically is clear that anyone who reads or listens from a person who reads, if that person is obligated to read, why can you fulfill your obligation of Megillah since it was read? Because the listening is the most important part. But with Kriya Shema, nobody else can be moitzi you with Kriya Shema, because the main thing is for you to say the Kriya Shema. And you can understand that Rabbi Yehuda says Kriya Shema, if you didn't listen, if you didn't hear it, you're Yoitzer, because with Shema, the main thing is saying it, and you said it. And therefore, this is the reason why Shema you can't be moitzi others. But with Megillah, the main thing is listening. There it could be, according to Rabbi Yehuda, somebody can be moitzi when he tells the second one, even though he himself cannot hear what he is stating. We'll turn the daf. The Magen Avraham in 689 on the Mechaba, who says that a cotton cannot fulfill the obligations of others with regard to the Megillah, even if he's of the age of chinuch, of education, asks why, if that's the case, the Beis Yosef and the Mechaba and the Beis Yosef are the same person. Permit a cotton by Ner Chanukah to light the candles in the house, like the Bala Yitor. By Megillah, he paskins that a kotten cannot fulfill the obligations of somebody who's become to be an adult. And it's difficult to make a differentiation between Megillah and Ner Chanukah. To say, well, Ner Chanukah, the very essence of lighting it is the persumenis and not the action. The fact that it's lit. And Megillah you have to say. That's hard to say. In Baran, it would seem that their laws are always the same. So the Magen Avraham explains that from the fact that a woman cannot fulfill the obligation of men of Megillah, we see that it's different the din of Kriyas Megillah from Ner Chanukah, because Megillah is similar to Kriyas HaTorah, and a woman can't do it for a different reason, as we mentioned earlier, because of Kvod HaTzibur. Therefore, also cotton can be Moitzi Acherim, because it's not Kvod HaTzibur. The Shulchan Aruch codifies. One who reads and one who listens from somebody who reads is just the same words as the Rambam, is Yotzi Dechuyva. Many times the Shulchan Aruch quotes the Rambam nearly verbatim. And the Mishnah Berurah adds that one has to have intent to be Moitzi, and the person who's listening has to have intent to fulfill his obligation. Just like other mitzvahs, when a person fulfills his obligation with somebody else, you need both sides. You need the person that's doing it having intent to fulfill the other person's obligation. The person who needs it to fulfill that being agreeable. Machaber says you have to listen from somebody who's obligated to read it. Therefore, if the person reading it was a deaf, can't be a mute, or a cotton or a shaita, you're not yotzei. And the Mishnah Berurah explains. A cherish we're talking about here, not a deaf mute, but rather a deaf person that he speaks but he can't hear. And even though the halacha is that if you can't hear it, you are yotzei, by Megillah they were more stringent that you should have to be able to hear it, because Pirsumin so everybody will hear it and the miracle will be well known. The Sha'ar Tzion admonishes that the one who reads the Megillah should be able to hear it himself. If not, he's not yotzei. The Mishnah Berurah adds, or it could be that a cherish, somebody doesn't hear, is worse, because since he can't in any way hear it, he's not considered somebody who's obligated to hear it, because the Torah doesn't obligate someone to do something which he cannot do. And in Shai Tshuva we find only a cherish that doesn't hear at all. However, if you stand next to him and you yell in his ear and he hears, you would fulfill your obligations if he reads. This is according to the Shulchan Aruch. But the Bach, the Peirush HaMeir, the Shagas Arya, and many Rishonim are of the opinion that even if you hear a cherish who is totally incapable of hearing, you're yotzei, as long as he can speak. But obviously, to begin with, everyone would agree that it's better to have someone be moitzi the Rabbim who can hear. What the Machaber writes, that a cotton cannot fulfill the obligations, is according to the Balei Itur. Mishnah Berurah explains that even though a cotton has the obligation of the Rabbanan, and Megillah is only the Rabbanan, he cannot fulfill the obligation of an adult, the rabbinical obligation of an adult to hear the Megillah, because a cotton has two Rabbanans. As we explained earlier, I guess in what we skipped over, that a cotton is first of all, the fact that he has mitzvahs is the Rabbanon, als chinuch, and that this mitzvah is also the Rabbanon, whereas a Gadol only has one Rabbanon. And he cites Hilchos Chanukah 675, that there are those who permit a cotton who became to the age of understanding to fulfill the obligations of others b'nei Chanukah, and the same would apply to Megillah, because the same idea should apply to both, according the Mogen Avraham. But most other Achronim explain that the Mechaber left out cotton by Megillah, because by Megillah they didn't want to rely on the Bala Itur, that he can fulfill others, the obligations of others. The Mishnah Berurah cites as the main halacha in the name of Samachaya that when there's no one else who can read the Megillah, then a cotton would be able to fulfill the obligations of others, even though he's a minor, as long as he comprehends what he is saying. We have completed Halacha 2.